And good evening to all of you. This weekend coming up is the Kentucky Derby. And of course, you know the story also of Barbourville Vineyards, Barbourville Estate, going back to the early 1800s, and the famous horse, Allegrante, which was then sold by Governor Barbour to Senator Henry Clay. It is our flagship Rosé. And so we're going to talk more about Rosé and Allegrante, the story of the horse, and the story a little bit the story also of quarter horses, which were running a quarter-mile horse track. Of course, this is not the case for the Kentucky Derby, but we will expand a little bit on both. But for now, enjoy the beautiful view of what used to be a quarter-mile horse track. I hope you enjoy the beautiful view of the field behind the historic ruins. By the way, as a reference, to the opposite side of the field there is a road, and that was the historic entrance to the estate. Where you enter today instead is a secondary entrance that was developed in the 1950s, when this was a sheep farm and new buildings were installed and a new access came in. But this is where people would arrive. They will cross the Blue Run and then go into the ruins. The entrance was on the north side, and the living quarters, let's say, or the daytime living quarter was on the south side, which was beneficial to have some warmer weather during the winter. I brought you here what it is, my most beloved tree, the most ancient oak. It's estimated to be over 250-year-old. It predates a lot of the history from this place even. And but going to Allegrante. Allegrante, as you know, our flagship Rosé was produced for the first time in the vintage 2017. And we chose to give an historic name for this estate, which was the name of a beautiful broodmare. It was a thoroughbred, contrary to the fact that here was a quarter-mile horse track. And Allegrante was, her parents were young Truffle and Fantomia, both thoroughbred brought from England. Allegrante then was sold, as you remember, from James Barbour, Governor James Barbour, to Senator Henry Clay, which then, after the purchase, Allegrante was brought to Kentucky to kickstart the bloodline of Ashland Stud farm, which became a very successful stable, which won 3 Kentucky Derbies. And but before I go to the Kentucky Derby, I want to go back a little bit about quarter horses. The history of quarter horses and racing starts in Virginia around 350 years ago, when a lot of the settlers from the UK came over and brought horses for entertainment, but also for racing and likely some gambling. Quarter horses, by the way, they don't have the stamina of long racing like thoroughbreds are. They're much bigger horses, thoroughbreds, but they have the highest speed ever recorded on a horse race, and it clocks at 55 55 miles per hour. Thoroughbred will always win on a longer track, but on a short track, a quarter miles, quarter horses will come in first. There are different lengths of races that are done with quarter horses, but the most famous one at the beginning was just the pure quarter mile. So right here in the back of the ruins, I can imagine in the 1800, late 1700, early 1800, having amazing horse racing. Unfortunately, back then, not likely they were having a libation with wine, because back in those days was more, other beverages were more popular, especially in Virginia, the names of maybe Madeira or beer or whiskey. But today, nevertheless, we do celebrate very well with rosé on the day of Kentucky Derby, which a lot of people refer to the race of the roses. Take an S away and you have the race of the rosé. So just enjoy some rosé this weekend, watching, or maybe those lucky that are there at the race itself. Talking about more on Allegrante, of course, the name of our meadow. Our meadow is not quite in bloom. There are very few yellow flowers peeking through, although we estimated another 10 days to 2 weeks. We're going to have a very incredible bloom this year. We did a lot of overseeding. What we did, we mowed the meadow versus in March, we mowed it a little earlier in January to allow the shredded material to be a bit composted and be a bit more compacted and broken down. And then we came with a drill seeding machine with a tractor, and we created another mix of flowers to seed a little more, to have even a bit more presence of flowers. The reason is that meadows in the past were eaten by roaming buffaloes in this area. And so now we don't have that environment anymore. So what happened, grasses are taking over the flowers. And so to compensate from this imbalance, that's what we did just this spring. We overseeded, more flowers are going to come up. So for those coming back, I can assure you, you will see a lot more things in bloom than you saw the year before. In our meadows, of course, we have our bees, and we just released not long ago our honey from Barbour's Vineyards. Right now the bees are mainly feeding on tulip poplar blossoms, and I will show you one. We have to go to a whole different part of the farm, but we will record a little video or an image. It's one of the most beautiful flowers you can see in ever. Although they're not much visible because on the poplar trees they're facing straight up. And for a reason they're called tulip poplar, because the bloom itself is very reminiscent, if not identical, to the most beautiful tulip. Of course, it's very important for me to share, I've done it before, but I do it again, what is in the blend of Allegrante. Allegrante Rosé, always predominantly Petit Syrah, and then a splash of Nebbiolo, which gives the Rosé a little bit of astringency, typical of Nebbiolo from the tannin, whereas Petit Syrah is very floral. Nebbiolo has a bit of citrus, like grapefruit, and then the tannin, very dry. And then a little bit of that finish that is slightly puckering makes it even more robust in wine, in food and wine pairings. You can even go to a white meat, to pork that is not a very fat cut. So it was truly designed with a lot of thoughtfulness to blend. Whereas a lot of rosé are blended just for perhaps a block of vineyards, red, could be Merlot, could be Cabernet Franc, whatever, that perhaps didn't make the cut to make a great red wine. a lot of time winery they resurrect to, let's use this for rosé, or let's say a lesser vintage like 2018, a lot of people made rosé. This instead is a rosé that is designed with purpose from the harvest, even from before the harvest, when we prune the vineyard of Petit Syrah and we pamper it all the way through. And it is indeed picked earlier than we would pick to make a very robust red wine to retain more freshness, more acidity. And then Nebbiolo as well. So very elegant rosé, also good for medium-term aging, let's say 3 to 4 years. I recently had 2019. I had a few bottles at home and I enjoyed it. This past week I had some Morel. It was fantastic. So to all of you, I wish a beautiful continuation of the spring. And by the way, I told you a few days ago we had some frost. We came out completely untouched. The season, it's very promising. We have a high number of clusters on the vines. And so I don't want to get too skeptical or create some bad luck. I don't believe in bad luck, but some of you may do. But I would say that this is so far a fantastic spring. It doesn't look like we have any frost on the way in the forecast. In fact, we're going to be in the 80s this week. By the end of this week, seeing what's the forecast of the following, I would say that we pretty much are, what people say, out of the woods. I'm still in. I go out, and I see you next week. Ciao.